Hobby Quick Hits. Delivering that breaking hobby news directly to your earlobes. You want to know those hot drops from the card shop? We've got you covered. With your host, John Newman.
Hey everybody, episode 128, Hobby Quick Hits. A little different episode today. Normally we don't always have guests on the show. Every once in a while. Today's a guest episode. Asked my friend Danny Black to record this episode with me. We just saw some auctions at Heritage kind of finalize. He had some items. He's a broker. He had some items in that auction, and I just wanted to kind of do a state of the market auction sort of report, and some prices. We have obviously the Mantle set a new record, but many thought it would actually bring more than that, and some other items didn't bring what analysts projected. And again, it's all subjective, right? But wanted to bring them on and kind of talk about sort of the state of the market, and maybe if you have certain items, anywhere from $500 all the way up, where maybe is the best place to put them to get to maximize your earning potential, if that's that's your thing. So we'll call this kind of a state of the market auction report with Danny. We cut a few segments out to make it happen, kind of a quiet news week. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed the episode. I want to thank Danny for coming on. We're going to hear a word from a couple sponsors and then get this show started.
MojoBreakShop.com is the best place to get your sealed wax products and brakes. They not only have the best selection, but the best prices. Whether it's a box or a whole case, they are your guys. They ship worldwide to your doorstep. Their reputation as one of the most trusted in the hobby goes unmatched. They are the 2021 Topps Rip Party Champion Breakers. From sports card to Pokemon cards, their selection can't be beat. They offer daily deals and pre-orders.
Hey guys, John Newman here. Mojo's prices are already great, but to save an additional 10% off anything in their store, use the code QUICKHITS. That's QUICKHITS. Check out the full service store that's open 7 days a week in Santa Clara, California, or the website at mojobreak.com.
Go ahead.
Let's check out this week's hobby wax releases. Take it away, Owen.
Hey guys, Storm from Sports Card Shop. Let's go over the weekly releases. On the 7th, we have 2022 Topps Museum Collection Baseball. On the 8th, we have 2022-23 Upper Deck MVP Hockey. On the 9th, we have 2022 Leaf Metal Soccer, 2022 Onyx Baseball Premium, 2022 Panini Donruss Elite Football, 2022 Panini NXT 2.0 WWE Hobby, Pokemon Infernape V, Pokemon Sword and Shield Lost Origins Booster, Pokemon Sword and Shield Lost Origins Elite Trainer, Pokemon Sword and Shield Lost Origins 3-Pack Blister Pack, Pokemon Sword and Shield Lost Origins Blister Pack, Pokemon Sword and Shield Lost Origins Booster Bundle, and Tristar Hidden Treasures Basketball 2022. Thanks guys, see you again.
Like the athletes we admire, the Sports Card Shop is changing the game. We're not launching threes, bombing drives, or hitting dingers, but we have built a unique gathering spot for all collectors to trade cards, talk sports, play games, and watch their favorite athletes on the big screens. Yes, we've partnered with Panini, Upper Deck, Leaf, Topps, Fanatics, Pokemon, and others to bring you all the latest in sealed wax and singles. But the Sports Card Shop in New Buffalo, Michigan is much, much more. Our recent expansion brings collectible sneakers, Hot Wheels, and more sports and entertainment memorabilia into the mix. Our new Collector's Cave game room is the perfect place to throw a rip party, bring friends, rip packs, trade cards, play billiards, ping pong, shuffleboard, classic arcade, and Xbox games, all while watching your favorite sport on TV. Visit us at thesportscardshop.com. Follow us on social @_sportscardshop, or better yet, visit us in person to learn about special events, party packages, new products, and everything we're doing for you. The Sports Card Shop, connecting people, sports, and the hobby around the world.
And now, our feature presentation.
All right, we don't always do interview guests on Hobby Quick Hits. This week's show is an exception. We just had the Heritage Auction complete, headlined by the 9.5 SGC Mano. And, you know, the market is up for debate, what's going on in the current market. And who better to have on my good friend Danny Black, who had brokered some items that were in that Heritage Auction. So we're not just going to talk about the Mano or just those items, but being that he, his fingers on the pulse, and especially with that auction, I thought who better to bring on to kind of do this episode. So Danny, welcome.
Welcome. Good to be here. What an exciting time for the hobby.
Well, we just saw, here's the crazy thing. Let's start with, I know it's been played out, the Mano, everyone and their mother's talking about it. Everybody, I saw a cooking platform post about it, but, it brought 12.6. I predicted at the National 12.7. And when I said that 12.7, I thought I might be even a little low. And then I read some other people's opinions, experts, air quotes, in the hobby, that analysis that thought it could bring 15, 16 million. So it didn't obviously hit that number. Like I mentioned, when I brought you on, you had some items in this auction. I don't know how much you want to talk about those or just in the market in general, but, your thoughts on overall in the Mano, just everything, wherever you want to go here.
Yeah, it's almost crazy where to begin. Let's start with the Mickey Mano, because that's the 800-pound gorilla in the hobby right now. First of all, let's start with all the positives. We have a public sale of a card without the buyer's premium. The card passed 10 million. So let's just take a second and appreciate this is the first time a card without the buyer's premium, or an item without buyer's premium, any memorabilia, any card in the sports world crossed that $10 million mark, passing the Diego Maradona soccer jersey from the Hand of God goal. With the buyer's premium, we got to the 12.6. First point, I was with you in the National when you said 12.7, so I will verify your prediction. And unfortunately, by price of right rules, you, however, would lose. So you were that close.
I had a feeling you were going to go to half the laugh. That's funny. But man, that was pretty close. That
was fantastic. And the second point is, I think we should be able to celebrate this. That really is a monumental thing. However, for those of us that make a living out of this, there was a little bit of an underbelly, and you kind of touched on it. And let's just talk about it. A lot of people, and Heritage actually did a live broadcast on YouTube leading up to the auction and during the auction, and they spoke openly about their estimates of hitting between 15 and 16 million. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that it's good. It's good to be enthusiastic, but as somebody who tries to help with their clients, it's hard to figure out where things are going to end up right now, and it's hard to know where and how to sell them. And I think this auction kind of showed a little bit of that.
Yeah, there's another item in that auction, Danny. I'm sure you know about it. The Babe Ruth game used bat that was also used by Home Run Baker. It's autographed. Everyone thought it was a layup for over $2 million. It did not reach the $2 million level. So that's kind of what with this episode, it's just talking about, we're seeing price, and it's not even just auction items, but we're seeing some estimates not be reached. We can even go back a little bit further. It's not ancient history, but the whole LeBron 101 logo man, Ken Golden, who needs to promote that more. I hardly saw anything on that. But all joking aside, right? That obviously people will tell you that was the end result was really didn't match sort of the hype. We're seeing, a lot of the hype, and I get these auction houses have to promote their lots and what they're offering. I get it. But we're seeing a lot of these estimates not be reached. So we went from a point in the market where these estimates were being blown out of the water and had no problem being reached. And now, if you use that as sort of the guideline, they're falling short of these marks. And it's crazy to think that we're talking about a new record breaker, yet some people think like it's a bad indicator that it actually fell short of those $15-16 million projections. It's just crazy where we are, but that's where we are. You had a few items that you were directly related to in this heritage auction. I mean, I don't know how much you want to get into. I'll leave that up to you, but just kind of off what I just kind of said, you're even expanding on that.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, because I really do want to talk about this. You and I talked a couple days ago after the auction, and I did have some items in there, and they did come in under the estimates. But estimates are hard. And let me first acknowledge, for any auction house, and this is true with Golden or REA or whoever it may be, or Heritage, anybody, an estimate is usually based upon comps. And we know this with cards. We do it all the time. On a $100 card, we comp it out. And when you start getting to these larger items, you're trying to comp them, and sometimes they're unique and sometimes they're hard to comp. I'll be completely fair. The items I was selling were extremely unique, although my wife will kill me for the grammar on that. You can only be unique. You can't be more unique. She'll correct me later. But it was a unique item. So things are hard to comp. And the question is, are the comps wrong, or is it a statement on the market? And that's really, where the conversation goes. Is it the comp, or is it the market? Because something's off when the numbers don't match. The Babe Ruth bet is a perfect example. I mean, to me, that if I had the money, that to me is what a treasure of an item that Babe Ruth bat is. Forget the 52 mantle. That's in a league of its own. We don't need to sell anybody on what a 52 mantle would be like to own. But I mean, a Babe Ruth bat, and it's an early Babe Ruth bat, and it's a young Babe Ruth bat, and those are almost impossible to find. I'll go a step further. Frank Home Run Baker's from Maryland. I'm a Baltimore guy. If I had that type of money, I love that bat. That's easily a $2 million bat. It came in at 1.6 with the buyer's premium. I mean, so you're talking about, 10%, 20% discount. And is that, once again, because the estimate was too high, or because the market's soft right now? And we keep hearing, or we've been hearing, for 6 months now, that the market's soft. But we heard that the high end was good. The auctions were still strong. And the LeBron triple logo, man, is a perfect example. And you joked about the Ken Golden thing, but let's do the math. If people are not familiar, when you have an item at an auction house, the auction house usually makes money in two directions. They usually charge the seller a fee to sell the item, and there's a buyer's premium. I've referred to that a couple of times. A buyer's premium is Heritage. It's public was 20%. And it's usually in that range. And that the buyer has to pay that. That's included in their price. That's not an extra fee. So the buyer coughed up $12.6 million for the mantle. The seller of the mantle looks at that 10.5 number, or whatever it was exactly, and that's what the seller is basing their income on the item off of. So the auction house is making money on the seller and the buyer. When you get an item like the logo man or the mantle, a lot of times those numbers get negotiated because the auction house does want the item for the publicity, for the marketing. And quite frankly, what a cool thing to have. And if you do this for a living, you want those types of items. So I understand, and I've negotiated with auction houses, and there's lots of ways to make everybody happy and to make a good agreement. But when you have a commission on an item that could be $15 million or $10 million or even $2 million, the commission and the percentage for the auction house is so high that what incentive do they have to necessarily market the rest of the catalog to the same degree? And it puts them in a tough position because you can have hundreds, thousands of items in an auction. I mean, PWCC on a weekly auction, I can't go through their catalog to look for a deal. I don't have the hours in the day to go through all the items. And I think that's, it's a challenge. So when you have a catalog, and physically, I mean, some of these auction houses, it's still a thick paper catalog. And
I have some. They're like phone books. Remember phone books? You don't see them anymore, but they're the modern day phone books.
I'm sitting on two, so I'm high enough for the monitor. But that's true. I mean, there's a ton of items. So, if I ran an auction house, I would not spend my marketing money on a $500 or $5,000 item when my commission on that is going to be a fraction. I mean, literally a fraction of my commission on the $10 million, $12 million item, even if there was a negotiated deal. But that leads to the question of what do you do if you're trying to sell those types of items? And I fall kind of in that mid-range where I don't represent the Mickey Mantle seller. I'll be honest and up front with everybody. The Mickey Mantle card was not my item in the auction. But I'm in the kind of that mid-range. And so I can't expect an auction house to give me the marketing and the publicity that Ken Golden gave the Logo Man and LeBron. I mean, that's just not realistic. At the same time, how do I best represent my clients to sell their items, in public or in private or in any way? There's, we can always say eBay, but that's not a platform for everybody, and that's not a platform for every item. And so it leaves a tough position. I'll be honest. I had hoped to do better in this auction. I'll be frank about that. But, was that because my standards were too high? Did I fall in love with my items too much? And was I, setting the bar too high? I don't know. Maybe. Did the auction house set the bar too high? I don't know. Was my client setting the bar too high? Who knows? But the numbers we wanted, we didn't get. I think it's fair to say at this point that there needs to be an adjustment on the estimates from both the buyers and the sellers, because people are going to pay what they want. I don't think we need to artificially inflate the estimates at this point. The market doesn't need to be pushed. The market is pulling itself into, call it a correction probably. And there's nothing wrong with selling a bat for $1.6 million. There's nothing wrong with selling a card for $12.6 million. So I think it's okay to not hit your estimates, but it's also okay not to put the estimates unreasonably high. And to be fair, the printed estimates were lower than that. But I think the enthusiasm of the pandemic has still gotten run away. I mean, I don't think there was any secret that, Ken Golden really wanted to get, the money on the LeBron Logo Man, and it didn't hit. The triple Logo Man just didn't hit the numbers they wanted. Let me say this is unverified, but I understand that he had a financial interest in that card. In one way, shape, or form or the other. Don't take that as fact. I'm not reporting that. I am telling you rumors that I've heard. So it does give an incentive to market a specific item in that auction. I don't know that he had a financial incentive in selling every item in that catalog. So what do you do to all the people selling the rest of the items in the catalog? What do they do with their items, and what's the best platform? And I think that's what you want to talk about. And I don't know that I have an easy answer, but I can tell you where the market is right now, and that's where I'm finding it.
Yeah. Do you think, Danny, that the auctions, these auction houses, they're just having too many lots in these auctions, that they should almost run them as like two separate auctions? That way, if you're not in, that upper echelon looking for that 6-figure or 7-figure card, or 8-figure card in this case, like, you can avoid that because, hey, listen, I don't have that kind of money. And then you almost have like two separate auctions, maybe, whatever you want to call it, the upper echelon, your regular, your premium, your regular auction, or however you want to differentiate it. Or do you think I know some people may not like this, do you think it's sort of on the auction house to say, hey, we're really, these are great items, but we're not really looking for a bunch of $500 or $1,000 items. We're you know what I mean? There's buyers for those, but we're not the place for that. Your eBays, your personal vaults, all the online selling platforms list that stuff there. They're great items. We're not putting the items itself down. We don't want 1,000 lots. We're trying to make this a 300 lot auction rather than 1,000 lot auction, and that won't get into that top 300 at this particular time. I mean, what are the best options there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard decision, and let me shed a little light on my personal situation. When you have a significant item or a unique item, one of the questions that the auction house and the client will discuss is actually which auction to put the item in. Most of the auction houses have a series of auctions throughout the year, and if you didn't know that, take that into consideration. There's probably, John, correct me if I'm wrong, 6 to 10 major sports auction houses, and most of those have multiple auctions a year. So do the math. I mean, you're in education, so that comes out to like 50 auctions a year of sports memorabilia. And if you take 50 auctions a year, conservatively at 500 items an auction, we're at what's that, 25,000 items that are being auctioned off a year. And I'm probably very, very low on that number. It is hard, like you said, it's a phone book on some of these auctions, and it's hard to get through everything, and it's hard for everything to get through to the public. I felt in my client situation that the platinum auction was so important, so significant, that it was best in my client's eyes to be in that auction with that exposure. Maybe I was wrong. Or, like you said, is it the type of thing where the mantle just becomes kind of its own night? There's only so many people in the world that are even bidding on that. So of all the eyeballs that were following it, I mean, how many guys were really, or how many people were in that? We're talking a handful. So are you really marketing to 6 people in the world? And that becomes the question. Did we have an entire auction for 6 people? Did Ken Golden have an entire auction for 6 people? And that's a legitimate, fair question when you talk about 2 auctions or separating them, because the rest of the auction doesn't get the attention that those 6 people got. I love the idea of some sort of modified system. I think that restricting the items is a good idea, but sometimes, and I'll be fair to the auction houses, and my client had one main item, and there were several other items that went with it. He wanted everything to be in the auction. The auction house is in a tough position because they, are going to be frank, most likely agree to that. So it adds some lower end items to the auction that now they have on their catalog. So there are 2 sides to that coin. But there are a lot of items that people just can't get to. And, you're a big sports fan. I'm, a big sports fan. We could go through these catalogs for days and probably get our eyes crossed, just trying to keep up with the prices, the items, the dates of the auction. You have to have in your first bid, then there's extended bidding and what time, and there's a strategy to when you bid and when you don't bid. I mean, it's overwhelming.
It can get confusing even to someone who's experienced. So I'll make this the short version of the story. When I was trying to get my 48 Leaf Jackie, I went on to these auctions at these auction houses, and there was a few. I didn't wind up winning, but I had been the leader, and then extended bidding happened. And so for the quick, lesson about extended bidding, it basically, the auction ends, but anyone that placed a bid within that time, they extend the auction where only those people can up the current bid. And the auction doesn't close, and every auction house might have their own set of rules, but the general rule is the auction's final when there's no higher bid after 30 minutes. And so when the auction closed on one of these Jackies that I was bidding on, I was leading. I looked at them like, okay, and I realized there was extended bidding. Someone outbid me within that first 30 minutes. I came over the top of him again, and then someone else went over the top of me for a second time, and then it was out of kind of where I had budgeted for that particular card, and so I didn't get it that route. But and so there's so many different things. Going back to this specific heritage auction, Danny, that we talked about that Ruth Bath. That's an incredible piece of history, incredible piece of memorabilia, but no one really talked about it during the auction itself. Because why? The mantle the 9.5 SGC mantle overshadowed literally everything in the auction. Do you think, is this even viable? Can you do like a 1-lot auction for an incredible piece like the mantle where can you do almost like a separate auction? Or how do you do that? I mean, in the sense, if it's the same company, it's still going to be kind of what everyone's looking at.
I mean, it's such a great question. It's really hard because as content creators, especially people who are at the National, I think the content creators hold some responsibility because as content creators, how many people covered the Ruth bet over the mantle? Everybody rushed to cover the mantle card. So that was a lot of free press that's not on Heritage Auctions. So there was, the content creators didn't cover a lot of other items in the auction. So, I want to be fair about that. And I'll give a shout out to Ryan Nolan, who I saw going around covering a lot of the Heritage auction. And he does a great job. But, Heritage didn't hide from the fact that the Mickey Mantle was the all-star, of the auction. And it should be. What a fantastic card. I don't want to knock the card. This is not about knocking the item itself, but it's about the item itself being so disproportionately cool and pricey compared to everything else. And does it steal the spotlight? Yeah. I think is what you're asking. And it does. And I think maybe it should have just been its own night. I mean, the auction was 2 nights anyway. You could have made Mickey Mantle the grand finale on the second night. And we could probably go prime time with that, for the money people are spending. Like you said, it's covered on the Food Channel or the Cooking Show or whatever you saw it on. Let's turn it into primetime TV. Let's have people, watching this. That's a great thing to watch because there's only 5 or 6 people bidding on it. But the rest of the auction maybe should, be its own thing. But I've got a question for you. As somebody who's bid online, can you imagine if you were tracking more than the Jackie at the same time? Could you keep up with multiple items?
It's tough. Well, listen, when I was on the hunt for that card, I was tracking multiple Jackies, and it's difficult. And then, you got to be careful, right? What if I win 2? I only really want 1. I can only afford 1. What if I just somehow, and hedging my bets, if the chips fall right or wrong, depending on how you look at it, I win both of these auctions out of, I'm bidding on 6. What if I'm the high bidder in 2? I really only want 1 of these. Now, I know you can buy it and then just relist it and try to sell, but you still got to pay for it up front. They don't let you relist it without paying for it first. So those thoughts are in my mind, right? Especially when you're hunting for one specific type of card, right? Those things are like, you almost got to say, which one do I logistically have a better chance at winning, and really put your eggs in that basket. But doesn't just because you do that doesn't mean you're going to win that auction, right?
And I think that's exactly the challenge of these big auction catalogs, like you mentioned.
Yep. So I don't know what we're seeing. This is the other thing I wanted to touch on tonight too, Danny. We're seeing a lot of these private sale set records, right? How many times we get a news release, a hobby news release? Hank Aaron rookie, a new record for the Hank Aaron rookie. PWCC private sale vault. Golden has private sale. A lot of the auction houses themselves have private sales. Like, as a seller and a buyer, I mean, do you think this is maybe a better option for one or the other? Both? I mean, what's your view on private sales versus auction, where there's always going to be commissions. Don't let anyone fool you, but the commissions may be different. You're not necessarily bidding against a bunch of people. You're just negotiating a price one-on-one with the buyer and the seller type of deal. I mean, what are your thoughts with these private sales versus, auctions?
I actually think it's a great opportunity for somebody to create a niche in the market is for the private sales of a lot of these items that are not Mickey Mantle or Babe Ruth. I thought, like I said, an amazing item in the auction that didn't do as well. If I had maybe, the connections for this item were not in Baltimore and not in my sphere is one of the reasons I worked with an auction house. If I had somebody that could have connected me with private buyers for these types of items, I would have absolutely been interested. You don't need everything to be public. And I'll tell you, in this situation, it was not great that everything was public on some of the stuff that happened behind the scenes. And so a lot of times the private buyer will give you not only the anonymity, but it might give you, hey, I know so-and-so collects Toronto Blue Jays, items. So, you're selling this Toronto Blue Jays World Series ring. Let me call Joe in Toronto, and I know he might be interested. Well, that's a fantastic skill and network, but it's multi-sport across the country, and that's hard, which is why most people go into an auction for the exposure, and that's why eBay, is the 800-pound gorilla, because nobody gets more eyeballs. So I love the idea of a private sale, but it's always a matter of connections. So that's why, like you said, it's going to come down to the major players anyway. You're still dealing with the PWCC. You're still dealing a lot of times with the same auction houses and the private sales. And so then they're back to their same connection of buyers. And a lot of people may not know this, but the amount of real big players, when you start getting over a couple $1 million, shrinks very fast these auctions. And so I think that there's a little misnomer out there that we're talking about tons of people. You're not when you get into that range. Now, when you drop into the $20,000 range or the $10,000 range, which is a lot of money for me, and I'm not buying that stuff every week or at all. But for a lot of people, that's a very affordable price, and it's significantly more. When I say significantly more, we're talking maybe a couple dozen over, for items in the Babe Ruth range, and we could be talking about tens of thousands for a $10,000 item. So it's a huge difference. So a private sale to me, is great on a high-end item, but it's also great if you've got a specific niche and know a specific buyer, so you don't get lost in the ocean with the other fish, and that's the advantage.
Yeah, great points, and you're right. People, we hear all these record-setting cards. I think people probably don't realize it's only a handful of people that are vying for that card. But all you need is two people, right, to drive the price up at the end of the day, and that's what sometimes it boils down to. As we're coming down the stretch here, we kind of started with the mantle. It brought the 12.6 with the buyer's premium, 9.5 SGC. People tend to forget there's 3 PSA 10s in existence. So let's pretend, right? You own one of those, Danny Black. You have a PSA 10 52 tops mantle. You saw what the 9.5 just went for. But you also see what's going on in real world macroeconomics. Things aren't great in those terms. You have the PSA 10 mantle. Do you sell now off piggybacking off what the 9.5 SGC sold for? Or do you say, you know what? I got the card. It's already paid for. I paid a lot less than what it's eventually going to sell for. I'll just wait till things in the world sort of right in and straighten up and get better, and the hobby, some of those prices start to trickle back up, and then all of a sudden you'll see this listed for auction. I mean, how do you play that if you own one of those 3 PSA 10 mantles?
Well, first of all, if I own one of those PSA 10 mantles, I am running around naked and showing everybody that I have the card. But I think the reality of it is, if you own one of those, you probably don't need to sell it. And let's be frank. Once again, we're talking about a very small group of people. I mean, you and I can probably name the owners of the PSA 10 mantles. That's how small the club it is. I mean, we know who has them. And the 9.5, you and I could do an hour on the background. That's got a history and a whole nother story that gives it a different provenance than the 10s. So that would create a whole nother discussion. And we, you and I could do 4 hours just comparing those two. But from a macro standpoint, I think it's good to let it breathe a little bit. I don't know that piggybacking right away, right now, today, does you any favors. I think whatever dollar you could get today, you can get in 6 months, you can get in a year. I don't think that card's ever lost anybody money. I think that's actually a fact. So it's something to, unless you need to sell, there's no reason to piggyback on it now is the short answer.
Yeah, I agree with you. If I own one, like you said, I probably, own a lot of other things that I don't necessarily need to sell that card. If I was going to sell that card, I would probably wait a little bit till things sort of get a little better market-wise, and then all of a sudden, hey, look what I'm putting up for sale. And again, we saw what happened with the 9.5. Sure as heck what would happen if a PSA 10 reached the market for availability. It's been, most people are trying to say it could bring $50 million. Again, take that with a grain of salt, right? Analyst predictions. We just did we just spent some time on that. It'll be a problem, unfortunately.
We'll start doing estimates on me now.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's going to remain a hypothetical question rather than a real one for us. But it's fun. It's fun to bat that around a little bit and throw that out there and
if anybody wants
to see how our answers compare.
And if anybody wants to send us money, you can reach us through our websites for the Mickey Mantle Fund. We're accepting.
That'll be a GoFundMe that lasts like
we'll sell
20
shares.
years.
We're doing our own fractional shares.
Yeah. Well, Danny, I appreciate you coming on, man. And as someone who's was involved directly in that auction, this is what you do as well. As a broker, and you gotta, as I always say, a finger on the pulse, especially when it came to this topic, and wanted to tackle it, and I said, who better to bring on? So glad you made some time, and we don't always have guests on this particular show, but I made an exception today, so thank you.
Well, I think this is probably the shortest conversation you and I have ever had.
It is. That, speaking of record breakers,
it takes us this long to say hello.
So we can. Who cares about the Mantle record? Exactly. It's the shortest Danny Black, John Newman conversation ever recorded. So
it's only because you're the best, my friend. I am honored that you had me on. For the quick hit, and always a pleasure to talk sports and hobby with you.
Well, thanks, man. I'm sure we'll do it again. So.
Yep, and I'm gonna I'll plug myself if you're looking for me. SportsBalt,
yes.
sportsbalt.com, because I got yelled at. I think the last time I talked to you, I didn't tell anybody who I was or how to find me. So my wife yelled at me. SportsBalt.com.
There you go. Great stuff as always from Danny. All right, thanks, Dan.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's gonna do it for this week's Hobby Quick Hits. Hope you like that. Every once in a while we may have a guest on this show. It happens sometimes with Sports Card Nation. We get, a 2-month backlog with scheduled guests and, want to do something quicker, including the interview, a shorter interview. So maybe we'll, every once in a while, I won't overdo it, but every once in a while I'll have someone on Hobby Quick Hits, much like today. The hobby, like we said, is doing, fairly well. The hobby's not dead. A lot of people writing obituaries. It's just the market, based on a lot of things, right? What's going on in real time is not, what we kind of got spoiled with a year and a half ago, right? I think we got spoiled, myself included. I sold a lot of stuff at peak, right? And, everything can't stay that way forever. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. Next week on this very program, no guest, but we're going to talk about a gentleman, piggybacking off that Mantle and the, provenance of it being from the Mr. Mint Allen Rosen find and purchase. We're going to do one of our hobby histories. Last time I did one with J. Warren Bowman, and this one's going to be obviously Allen Rosen, Mr. Mint from New Jersey, passed away in 2017, but we're going to, learn about him. Even though, he only died 5 years ago, much of what his impact was felt mostly in the 80s, some of the 90s, but a lot of maybe the younger set don't know as much about him. And, sort of a polarizing dude, kind of a love-hate kind of guy. Most, people either loved him or hate him and nowhere in between. So another hobby history next week, Allen Rosen, Mr. Mint. We did that Bowman one about 2 months ago, so every so often, every 6-8 weeks, we'll do another hobby history where we learn about someone that's no longer with us and their impact and what they brought and meant to the hobby. So with that being said, we'll see you next week for the Mr. Mint episode. As always, check us out, our Friday show, Sports Card Nation. With this week's guest is going to be Mike O from YouTube. So have a great day. Have a great week. Stay well. Be safe. We'll see you soon.